I'm Aaron Richardson. I'm from Lafayette, Indiana. Born and raised in Indiana. I work as a maintenance supervisor for an automotive company, Subaru of Indiana. How did I get into hot rods and racing? Okay. Well, my background in racing goes back a lot further than what it does with hot rods. I started out with my dad raced hydroplanes when I was real young, growing up, and we would travel around Indiana, Illinois, with the APBA and the Indiana Outboard Association, going to a lot of races doing that when I was young. Then at some point, as with many other racers, he was made an offer that he couldn't refuse on all his racing equipment, so he sold out of racing boats and then got into racing quarter midgets at a small local track by where he lived. So kind of dabbled into those two things. Always grew up, I had a racing go-kart as a kid that was my around the yard kart. So go-karts, mini bikes, all that kind of stuff. We would always have something with motors on it growing up. From there, always, you know, would work on my own cars and everything growing up. Wasn't until after going to school, I went to Purdue for a while. Went for engineering and just really had a hard time getting into school. Dropped out, went and got a job, you know, all that kind of stuff later on, and then started getting more into working on my own cars and stuff. I did end up going to Wyotech, got into the hot rod program there. Did really well with it. I really liked what I was doing, and got into working on cars after the fact there. So from there I started getting more into older cars, looking into going to car shows and stuff like that, and then, you know, met you at the Road Rocket Rumble. You know, that's kind of where I was really getting into. I wanted to build my own, like, hot rod and stuff. So yeah, from there a nice friendship blossomed. Then we started getting into hooligan shit. So over the time, going through car shows, and car shows are fun. Started going to drag races though. You know, there's something about needing to be involved in everything all the time. So, you know, I ended up making friends ultimately with Patrick Hampton and helping out with, you know, getting with him and working on the panty dropper a lot. So I really enjoy being involved. This will be the first time, aside from the occasional outing to the drag strip just for fun or whatever, this will be my first time driving anything for real. So that'll be interesting. My first time to Bonneville, what a trip. So, you know, Mike, you approached me about going on the trip, driving across country in a Roadster just to make a trip out to Bonneville, and I was like, I'm in. So you picked me up in Indianapolis in the pouring ass rain in a Roadster with no top on it, and both of us in motorcycle wetsuits trying to stay dry. But that was a really cool experience, driving across country in a Roadster, you know. Kind of a bit unnerving at first, you know. Just being on the road in an open car with on the interstate with all the people out there and everything, you know, it was kind of a bit unnerving at first, but then, you know, it turned out to be a really cool trip. the thing that stands out to me the most out of all of it on Bonneville and everything else is after we got there, we unloaded Larry's coupe and we went out to go out on the salt for the first time. It was kind of just a very surreal experience because I was following you. You know, you were in Larry's car driving it out and I was driving the Roadster, and just being by myself, quiet, just me in the car driving across the salt and realizing just how cool that place is, just how lucky and fortunate I was to have that experience. It was really, really cool. I mean, just to try and just focus on what I was doing, but at the same time just kind of take it all in. You know, I'm driving a hot rod across the salt like many generations before. It was really cool. I mean, unforgettable experience. And then getting to see so many innovative vehicles and interesting things, and stand and watch cars going through tech, and watching Poteet run his car, watching the Challenger 2 run was really cool. I mean, it was really awesome to see all those things, and then the whole the environment, the people, talking to everybody was really cool. And the car shows that show up at the Nugget every night, it's all just a really great experience. I mean, it's a cool, fun time. Hot, but very fun. How did I get involved with this race car? Well, this is the practice car, right? So after the trip to Bonneville, it was in 18, right? It wasn't very long after that where it was like, I'm building a streamliner. It was like, okay, I'm in to help. So I'm totally down for, you know, being involved. It'd be really cool to make it happen. So I started helping out with working on the streamliner, you know, and that is a very large project. And I know I've seen some stuff, or we've talked about it, about people being like, we just kind of dropped this streamliner project and, you know, whatever happened to that. And that's, even after working on this car, that's a huge project for that thing. I mean, that's going to be quite an undertaking. So, and then when you started talking about building the car where we could all go license in and everything, it's kind of the same thing. I'm totally down to help out where I can, as little as it was. But still, it was fun to see it, you know, kind of initially take shape and then start coming together, and from there it really spiraled out of control, as things normally do around here. 2023 racing season, I think it's going to be different than the last time. Just going to watch, we'll be involved. I think it's going to be a little bit more anxiety for me on my part, you know, given that it's my first time for sure on being a rookie driver, and just all the aspects of everything that has to go on with, you know, making sure the car is ready to go, make sure we have all our things together, going through tech, all the things, drivers meetings and all that. It's going to be different. I think it'll be a lot more fun ultimately, stressful at times, but I think it's going to be really cool. What's my go-to order at the Salt Flats Cafe? What's going to give me the least amount of gastrointestinal distress?
Pancakes.
Pancakes it is. What's the first thing that comes to mind with Bonneville? Again, I'll have to go back to just driving across the salt for the first time. And we were talking about it earlier. Just the immenseness of how big the salt flats are, how big everything is, and how far you can drive without getting anywhere. You're just in the middle of nowhere. It's another planet, you know, it's a crazy environment. How many times do I think Jesse's gonna get mad at us and tell us he hates us? 57.
A little bit about myself: Jim Laughlin, Jamesburg, New Jersey. Have a small hot rod shop, mess around with vintage race cars, land speed cars, a little bit of anything. My background of hot rods and racing: grew up around cars my whole life. Drag strips, mainly dirt tracks as a kid with my dad, just going around, always into old cars. Drove 71 Bronco as first car, 66 Mustang. Just drove old cars more than new cars, and learned how to build them along the way. Got hooked into vintage race car stuff, did race gentleman stuff. A lot of early land speed cars kind of piqued my interest, and that's where I learned metal shaping and stuff, and progressed into going to Bonneville and getting involved in this. First time I went to Bonneville, a friend of mine at the time was running a V4F belly tank, invited us to come out and crew, kind of a last minute thing. Me and my wife booked a flight, jumped on a plane, flew to Vegas, rented a Harley, rode to Bonneville, crewed with him. A neat first experience because he ended up setting a record, backing it up. So that was my first experience at Bonneville, was crewing for a car that got a record. So kind of ruined it, but it was a neat way to start. I got involved with this car. I've been friends with Mike for a while. We go to Bonneville together, became a tech inspector a couple years ago. Just make bad decisions, and long drive home from Bonneville, we pretty much came up with the blueprint for this car. What I'm looking forward to most this year is getting the car out, shaking it down. I'll have my whole family there, my parents there. They all support all these bad decisions we make. Shake the car down, see what it does, see how delusional we are on what kind of number we'll run. I don't have high hopes, but I think it'll do fair. Go-to order at the Salt Flat Cafe is a plain hamburger and fries. First thing that comes to mind at Bonneville is early hot rod magazines, really. I have some 40s hot rod magazines hanging in the house, you know, early Bonneville Salt Flats cars. Belly tank is the first thing that comes to mind. I think Jesse will get mad at us an uncountable number of times.
My name is Crystal Laughlin, and I'm married to Jimmy Laughlin, who's one of the drivers for the car. We live in Jamesburg, New Jersey. I am a yoga teacher, and I have 2 kids. My background with hot rods and racing is really nothing until I started dating Jimmy. My brother and dad rode dirt bikes, and I remember trying it. My dad always had old cars that he worked on, and I can remember them, but I wasn't really into anything until I started dating Jimmy. And even when we first started dating, he was into building his cars, but not so much into the racing aspect of it. And then slowly but surely he got into it, and it's something he loved, and he would spend long hours working on it, but I knew where he was in the garage, and I could go out there and watch, and slowly but surely it took off, and now here he is. My first time to Bonneville was 2017, 18, and we went out to help somebody we knew at the time race their car, and me and him flew into Vegas and then rented a motorcycle, and from there drove all the way, I think it was like 3 or 4 hours from Vegas to Bonneville in the heat on the back of a Harley. And it was a pretty amazing experience going, and we were only there for maybe 3 days and then we flew home, but just being out there on the salt, and it was pretty wild. And I was happy to be there, and something everybody should try to get out and do. How did I get involved with this race car? Just supporting him, supporting you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really it.
Drugging, kicking and screaming?
No, it's all good. It's exciting to be a part of that, to be a part of history, to be a part of going out there for a first time, of knowing somebody that hand built the car that you did. And, you know, it's pretty cool. What am I looking forward to most for the 2023 race season? Going out there and setting a record, watching you guys from start to finish and completing it, and seeing where everybody takes it from there. Oh, my go-to order at the Salt Flats Cafe. I think I got the quesadilla the one time. I don't even remember. I think it was the quesadilla. I remember my son got the pancakes and ate all the syrup on it, and then was bouncing off the motorhome that night. But I think I got the quesadilla or the tacos. One or the other. They're both good. Everything's good there. The first thing that comes to my mind when someone mentions Bonneville is the heat and the sun. Jesse will get mad at you and say he hates you all. No times. Zero times. Because I will be there to guide him and support him. I have no apprehensions. No apprehensions about this trip to Bonneville. It's going to be fabulous.
For those of you that don't know, I'm Mike from Cornfield Customs. I'm pretty much just your everyday asshole that posts stuff on the internet and makes up rumors. And I like to go on adventures and build cool race cars. I don't really have much of a background in hot rods or racing. I got into hot rods, I think, probably when I was around 19 or 20 years old. I'd already started the shop, but I was doing more mini truck stuff and just general fabrication, and I wanted to build a Model A for myself, and that's kind of how it evolved. And kind of hot rods and racing go hand in hand, so you know, I wanted a Model A for myself, but I also like to go fast and have ignorant cars, so it was kind of the same thing. And I've had rear engine dragsters, you know, all kinds of different race cars over the years. But all of my hot rod stuff always had that early land speed style to it. So it kind of bridged from there to where I had the race car, street car, hot rod feel. And it evolved kind of into the car that you see behind me, and then, you know, some of the other land speed things I'm working on currently. So again, I wouldn't say I really have much of a history. If anything, it started later in life. But at this point, I mean, I'm approaching 20 years in the industry, but it's just been whatever I wanted to be involved with, and pursuit of chasing dreams and wanting to get involved. The first time I went to Bonneville, it was an adventure. Me and Jamie, my wife, decided we were gonna go out and see Speed Week. And some plans changed last minute. She ended up having to work a little bit later than we thought, so we ended up leaving a day late, and you know, 2,500 mile trip across country took longer than we thought, so we didn't even get to the Salt, I think, until Wednesday, maybe Thursday, because I didn't know what to expect. You know, I tried to do my research online and get an idea of how things worked and the preparedness that I needed to have, and there really wasn't a lot of great information at that time, because I think that was 2011. So we drove all the way out there, didn't know what to expect, because I'd never been west of the Rocky Mountains at that point. So, you know, once we got to Salt Lake, like, yeah, it's 100 miles, but 100 miles doesn't seem like a lot. So it was, you know, turning the CB on and waiting to see how far we could hear, and where is it, are we there yet, how close are we, because we just didn't know. You know, you go through Salt Lake and you drive until you see the Bonneville sign. Like, that's really all it is. So we get there and we go out on the Salt, and it's totally mind-blowing. You know, you get off I-80 and there's nothing, just salt desert. Drive down the access road, cross the bend in the road, and you just keep driving, and then the road just stops. And they just point out and they say, go that way. And at that year, the course, the starting line I think was 2 miles out from Land's End from where the salt had migrated. So we were just following a cone road, and every little bit there was a speed limit sign that said 55 mile an hour. And we come up and there's race cars sitting there, and it was the starting line. And I mean, instantly, as soon as I got on the salt, I knew it was game over. I mean, my life was instantly overran with it. And I even told Jamie at the time, and I'm like, you don't realize how f***ed I am, because this is it. I'm like, I'm going to come here every year for the rest of my life, as long as I can afford it. And like I said, that was in 2011, and I've been every year except when it's been rained out ahead of time. I've been there in the rain. I've been there for cancellations. I mean, 2011 and it's 2023, so we're going on relatively 12 consecutive years. Yeah, I mean, my life has been absorbed. You know, I built this car, the Streamliner. I've got a belly tank in process, the V4F Roadster. I mean, it's just, it's my passion in life. And I mean, I owe it to that first trip out there, even though it wasn't as exciting as being there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but it was enough to set its hooks in me. I got involved with this race car, like many bad ideas, just sitting around and having too much time on my hands. This car is a product of not being able to find something that I wanted. So in 2021, me and Jimmy were at Bonneville. I picked him up at the airport. I drove out, and we were working in tech, and the Streamliner was in progress. And of course, everybody's like, how's the Streamliner coming? When's it going to be done? You know, the things that make you all sad because your car's not there. And one of my buddies is like, man, you should buy a practice car. You know, find somebody that wants to get out of racing, buy it, fix it up to the level you want, and have a practice car. That way you've got something cheap. You can get your licensing, you can play, and then while you're building the Streamliner, you can be involved. So we looked around and there wasn't much there for sale, and my friend Paul said that he had, it wasn't a Fiat, but it was it was same thing as a Fiat, but it was just a different manufacturer. And we tried to track that car down while we were there with no luck. So by then I'd been bit by the bug of we have to have a practice car. So on the way home, because Jimmy rode all the way home with me, we decided, okay, we're going to build the practice car. And we worked through the entire design process. You know, we're going to use the flathead out of the Indy Roadster because it's done, built, ready to roll. We'll just pull the injector off of it, clean things up. I started ordering parts on my phone, so we ordered a new fiberglass 2627 T-body and started getting parts. And it was pretty much built in the back of my mind by the time we got home. So I'd been home maybe a week and parts started rolling in. And 2 years later, we have the finished race car. And, you know, it's been an adventure because it started out as to be the practice car. And we were going to build it in 12 months. And we came close. Everything was pretty much done other than the final weld out. But, I mean, all the systems were in it. Everything worked. We could have driven it, even though it was just, you know, nothing was finished welded, but we couldn't have competed in the racing. But I figured it would be better, instead of rushing to get there within 12 months, to take it out, have all my fellow tech inspectors look at it, get it pre-teched, and be ready for this season, which worked out well since 2022 was a complete washout. And, you know, it kind of evolved from there. And people said, hey, you should really take this to Grand National Roadster Show. You should put it in for the Amber. So I was a little late on that, so we were on the wait list for America's Most Beautiful Roadster at Grand National. And we unveiled the car at Grand National in February, and now we're ready to go out and absolutely thrash it on the salt and make it not a show car anymore. As weird as this sounds, with what I'm looking forward to most in this season, I don't think it's what most people would say. I like to build the cars and I like to experience the cars. So am I looking forward to driving the car? Yeah, but I'm more excited to watch the car go down the course. I want to see it in action. I want to see everything function. Whether we get a record or not, cool, but I mean, it's not every day or every everybody's chance to build a car and take it to Bonneville and run it. So I'm more excited about the experience of going with my good friends and letting them drive the car, because I can't personally drive the car and watch the car go down the salt. So that's one reason, like, I'm letting Jimmy and Aaron drive the car before I even drive it. Just, I want to be there in the support truck pushing them off, because I know that then I can watch the car, I can see it function, and we can all have a good time. So it's not getting a record. That would be awesome, but that's not my main goal. It's just going out, having a good time, and having a good experience with, you know, some of my best friends I've got. At Salt Flats Cafe, the only go-to you need to worry about is the Poncho Special. Anything else, forget it. There's a lot that I think of when I think of Bonneville. Mainly, it's just instantly all of the history. Like, I can't pinpoint one exact moment. Like, if you were to come up to me and say, Bonneville, the first thing that would click into my mind is the mountain range and the salt. And then, you know, the vintage cars would start, you know, kind of flying into my mind, like the Challenger 1 and the Redhead, and you know, a lot of the early piston-driven cars, all of the streamliners that you know, I really like. And even now, like, I still love all the old stuff, and I like a lot of the new guys that are coming in with nostalgia-style built cars, like the Bean Bandits and Moon, and even Brian Bass's new car. I mean, they just scream vintage Bonneville, but it's all modern, updated, fast cars. So I would say the environment and knowing that it's just hollowed ground is the first thing that I think of whenever Bonneville comes to mind. I don't think there's a quantable number of times that Jesse's going to say he's mad at us or hates us. From past experience, I think it's going to be 10 to 15 a day at least. I don't know why, but I really think he's going to be upset. The Roadster is pretty much exactly like what I talked about earlier. It was just a series of bad ideas, I guess, if you want to call it that. It's just sitting around, coming up with different cars that I liked. Like, I really like the Moon modified Roadster and the Bean Bandit car. Those, I think they've just got the look. So I pulled inspiration from those cars very heavily, and kind of drew on that based on the wheelbase that they had, and kind of put my own style on it. Color-wise, it was the same color scheme we had picked out for the Streamliner, so I kind of evolved that. And the rest was built mainly on necessity. The drive shaft being kicked over at a weird angle was mainly due to getting the driver lower, to get the cage lower so we can cut more out of the wind, and things just kind of fell into place. I had a basic concept of what I wanted and how I wanted to make it happen, and I just built on those key principles and made sure everything fit and flowed around those. So it's kind of form followed the function on this car, and we just started with some standards of a 2627T and a wheelbase and went from there. So starting on it, I just acquired all the parts that I needed. We got the body, the wheels, some mock-up tires, and a mock-up engine and transmission, and I just laid it all on the floor. I think there's pictures on Facebook in the build album. It's either the floor or the table. We just laid everything out and kind of started measuring, and from there I drew the frame out in AutoCAD so we could mandrel bend the rails, and started. I think the first real work weekend we did the chassis, front suspension, and the majority of all the tube cage work, and it just got out of control from there.
What's your go-to truck stop for emergency restroom breaks?
There's one truck stop I always like to hit. It is a Love's truck stop in between the Illinois border and Lafayette, Indiana, where I saw a guy. I guess I didn't see him, I heard him. He prolapsed his asshole into the bottom of a toilet bowl. So there's a lot of, not fond, but memories tied to that truck stop. So yeah, I would say that is my most favorite truck stop on the planet. You all right over there?
Good. What are the chances of us seeing some big old boobies on the salt.
There might be some big old boobies. I think there's going to be the chance of seeing big old boobies on the salt. I wouldn't necessarily think as like female anatomy boobies, but I know quite a few people that I would dictate as boobies, and I'm sure they're going to be there.
My name's Jamie Wagner. I'm married to Mike Wagner. We've been married for 13 years and we've been together for about 16 years. So we were pretty young when we got together. I work at an insurance company. We have 3 pug dogs and 2 cats, and that's pretty much it. We're pretty boring. So my background with hot rodding racing is probably a little bit different than most people's, mainly because I got into it because Mike and friends were into it. Just being around cars all the time, I always would pick out what I liked, what I thought was interesting. I just like different aspects of it, the different history. I really like the history behind the cars. I think that's pretty cool. And I also like a lot of like old trucks and old farm trucks, because it's cool to think about not just the car itself, but like the people and how they used it. I think that's interesting. So the first time I went to Bonneville, I think was like 2011. Mike and I went at the end of Speed Week, like we caught it on the wrong weekend. It was pretty funny. We got there towards the end, but we had a really good time. It was my first long road trip, and I can't remember. I think he had been out that far, but I don't think he had been to Bonneville yet. I think that was our first time was together. But generally it was a really good trip. We hadn't been married very long too, so it was kind of one of those moments where you're like, let's see how this goes. But we did have a really great time, actually. It was really fun just to see these cars driving in this beautiful area too. How big it is. I think most people underestimate how big Bonneville is and how much land there is. So that's pretty cool too, to be out like in nature and realize like you're just this little speck. It's kind of interesting. Oh, well, I guess I got involved because Mike came home from Bonneville one year and said, I'm building this race car. And I'm like, well, aren't you building another one already? But this one felt more reasonable, quicker, if that made sense, because he has been working on the Streamliner project for a long time, and I think, and I know Aaron had been working on it with him too, and the Streamliner just seemed like such a huge undertaking that it was interesting to hear him talk about this car and his plans and his thoughts, and it was one of those conversations of, I already have this, I already have this, I already have this. So it was easier for him to go ahead and start building it. So I was just mental, emotional, and support, and yeah, that's how I got involved. I think this year will be really fun for a couple reasons. The first is it'll be one of the first times that Mike's had a car that's done and running, that's his, that he built for himself out there. So I think that's going to be pretty cool to see like that dream come to life, but also because we have so many friends and the support system that's going to be out there too, which is going to be super awesome, because I think there's about 15 to 20 people coming just to see, just to spectate, and just to be there with us. So I think that'll be really fun. I think it'll just be a good trip in general, but I'm excited to see it run, and hopefully, even if it doesn't break a record, I don't think that's the goal. The goal is really to have a good time and do it safely and spend some time with friends and make memories. So I haven't been in a while. So I think the last time I went to Bonneville was 2016. We were trying to figure that out the other day. So I don't know what my go-to order is. Usually at Mexican restaurants I get chimichangas. So I'll probably get chimichangas or tacos or quesadillas or breakfast. Breakfast is always good. My first thing that comes to mind and first memory, I really think about like the nature of it and how big it is. It depends on who I'm talking to, because if they're people that have been before, it's an entirely different conversation than people that have never been. So if someone has not been, then it's more educational for me, like explaining to them like the landscape and the two to courses and how racers have to take into different considerations. Like the motorcycle guys are concerned about the wind, and the car guys are too, but not quite the same way, right? Just that kind of conversation. That's what I think of. Like, has this person been, and do they think they know what they're getting into? Because there are times too, if it's someone who hasn't been before and I've been, and we can have a conversation of like what to expect. And I think sometimes people underestimate me because they just underestimate me. I think I have that look about me that people don't realize. I've been probably 5 or 6 times, so probably more than a lot of people. So when I try to give them advice, I don't know if they'll listen to me, but it's from a loving place of, you might not want to take a pedal bike because you might be a little tired. Apprehensions, the only thing I'm worried about is twofold. Just safety is probably number one, of course, which I think is natural. And then my other concern, of course, is hopefully the car, nothing happens to it. Like, I'm sure you guys will be safe, but also then I don't want you to blow it up, the motor, and then do one pass and blow up the motor and then we're done. That's my apprehension. Jesse won't get mad at me, but Jesse will get mad at you guys probably 17 times. I feel like I need to have a ticker and start tracking them. I don't know, I think it's gonna be a fun trip. I look forward to it. I think it'll be fun because a lot of our friends are coming again, like I said before, and our friends, everyone's whole family is gonna be there too, pretty much, which I think will be pretty cool. That I hope these kids who get to go realize the opportunity that they are like getting with going to Bonneville, especially at a young age. I know some of our friends' kids have gone before, but especially for a handful of them, this is a different year because their dads are running. So I look forward to that for them, like from their perspective.